March 30th, 1998. Florida State Prison. Judy Buenoano, 54, wakes up with only hours to live. But there's no fear in her eyes, no pleading, no desperation, just calm. She orders her final meal as if it's any other day. A strange choice, considering what she'd done. This was a woman who killed for profit, again and again. Today she would become the first woman executed in Florida in over a century. In the same prison where countless men had been executed before her, Judy was about to make history. She would become the first woman to face the electric chair in Florida in over a century. But this wasn't just another execution. This was the final chapter in the dark story of a woman who killed not out of rage, but for profit, turning love into death and murder into a business. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling story of Judy Buenoano, how she lured her victims, and how one survivor brought her deadly web to an end. Welcome back to Fatal Verdict. In today's video, I will take you through the timeline of the life of Judy Buenoano, a woman whose chilling crimes shocked the nation and earned her the title of Black Widow. From her troubled childhood to her calculated murders, we'll uncover the twisted motivations behind her actions, how she turned love into a deadly weapon, and how a survivor's resilience led to her eventual downfall. We'll also walk you through her final days in prison, her last meal, and the haunting final words before she faced the electric chair. Before we dive in, we want to hear from you. Comment below and let us know where you're watching from. It's always great to connect with our community. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to help us grow our channel. If you're not subscribed yet, we'd love to know why. Let us know in the comments, and we'll make sure to take your thoughts into consideration. Now, let's get started. Judy's life had been one of dark calculation. She didn't kill in a moment of rage. She killed for money. Her husbands, boyfriends, and even her own son. Every death brought her one thing: a life insurance payout. Judy turned relationships into a deadly business, taking those she loved and betraying them for financial gain. But she thought she could keep getting away with it. That is, until one man survived, and that was enough to bring down her entire scheme. Judy Buenoano, born Judius Welty on April 4, 1943, in Quanah, Texas, had a difficult start to life. At the age of 4, she lost her mother, a blow that would forever change her. With her mother gone, Judy was sent to live with her grandparents. While this may have seemed like a safe place, her sense of stability was short-lived. Her father remarried, and Judy, along with her younger brother, moved to Roswell, New Mexico to live with him and his new family. The warmth and care she needed were replaced with neglect and mistreatment. Judy's new family did not see her as a daughter, but rather as someone to take advantage of. She was made to do all the household chores, while her stepbrothers did nothing. The treatment she endured from her stepmother was harsh. Judy often went hungry and was treated like a servant. The emotional strain was worse than the physical. Every day was filled with constant criticism and isolation. It wasn't long before Judy's relationship with her family began to break down. The emotional toll of being mistreated for years left her feeling alone and betrayed by the very people who should have protected her. By the age of 14, Judy reached her breaking point. One day, in a moment of frustration, she lashed out. Grabbing a pot of hot grease, she threw it at her father, stepmother, and stepbrothers. Though the burn injuries were significant, the court didn't see a child pushed to the edge. They saw violence, and Judy was sentenced to 2 months in prison. When she was released, Judy was faced with a difficult choice: return to a home where she faced daily abuse or go to reform school. For her, the decision was clear. Reform school was safer than the family she had known. This part of Judy's life would leave an indelible mark. Her experiences shaped her, teaching her that survival sometimes meant relying only on herself. It was a lesson that would define her future and her ability to manipulate those around her. In 1961, Judy met James Goodyear, a steady and reliable man who seemed like the perfect partner after her difficult past. He was a sergeant in the United States Air Force, and his stable, respectable life offered the normalcy Judy had longed for. They married, and for a while, things appeared to be just what Judy needed. But Judy had a plan, one that had nothing to do with love. Instead of nurturing her marriage, she was already thinking of a way to benefit financially from it. Slowly, she began to put her scheme into motion. In September of 1971, James returned home from work feeling ill. Over the course of the evening, his health continued to decline. He became weak and eventually passed away. The doctors couldn't pinpoint the cause, but they concluded it was natural causes, perhaps a heart attack or some other undiagnosed condition. The death seemed ordinary, and no one raised any suspicions. Judy stepped into the role of the grieving widow, handling herself in a way that left no questions unanswered. She attended the funeral, accepted condolences, and showed the world a woman who had just lost her husband. In the weeks that followed, Judy received a substantial life insurance payout from James's policy. No one had suspected anything unusual, and Judy had just walked away with a sum of money she never could have dreamed of before. For over 10 years, the deaths in her life went unnoticed. No one connected the dots between James's death and the others that would follow. Judy's ability to act the part of the sorrowful spouse kept her under the radar, and she continued collecting insurance payouts with each new death. Her first success taught her something powerful. She could get away with murder as long as she played the role of a grieving wife. The plan was simple: gain trust, take out insurance policies, and wait for death. No one suspected a thing, and she moved forward without fear. James Goodyear's death marked the beginning of Judy's chilling pattern. She had found a way to profit from death, and with each successful crime, she grew more confident that she could continue to evade detection. What no one knew was that this was only the beginning, and Judy's deadly plan would continue until someone finally noticed the pattern. After Judy's first husband's death, she moved to Trinidad, Colorado in search of a new beginning. It was here that she met Bobby Joe Morris, a man who seemed harmless enough. He was kind, with a steady job and a simple life. He didn't expect anything out of the ordinary, and for a time, Judy played the role of a caring girlfriend. Bobby Joe quickly fell for her, and their relationship blossomed. To outsiders, everything appeared normal. But behind the scenes, Judy was already plotting her next move. She knew exactly how to manipulate his trust, gain control over him, and ultimately use him for her own gain. Like before, Bobby Joe would become another piece in her scheme to profit from death. In January of 1978, Bobby Joe started feeling unwell. He complained of feeling weak, dizzy, and nauseous. Judy was there to care for him, offering reassurance, but his condition only worsened. Days turned into weeks, and his health continued to decline. Despite seeing doctors, no one could determine the cause of his illness. Judy's calm demeanor made it easy for her to blend into the background as a concerned partner. To everyone else, Bobby Joe's sickness seemed like a mystery, one that was beyond anyone's understanding. What no one knew was that Judy had been poisoning Bobby Joe with small, undetectable doses of arsenic. She had learned from her first crime how to carry out the act without raising suspicion, and this time it went according to plan. As Bobby Joe became weaker, Judy maintained her role as the caring girlfriend, never once revealing the true nature of his illness. When Bobby Joe finally passed away, the doctors struggled to identify a clear cause of death. The death was ruled as something unexplained, but Judy continued to play her part perfectly. She appeared as the devastated girlfriend who had lost her partner far too soon. No one questioned her,
and within days, she was able to collect the life insurance money from Bobby Joe's policy. Once again, Judy had pulled it off. The death was ruled natural, and with her acting skills and calm demeanor, she avoided suspicion. Another man had died, and she had walked away with yet another payout. Judy's confidence grew as she realized her formula was working. She could take lives and avoid detection as long as she kept playing the part. She had learned to make death look like an accident, and as long as she kept the act up, no one would be the wiser. But this would not last forever. The web she wove would eventually unravel. After Bobby Joe Morris's death, Judy took a significant step that reflected her increasing confidence and sense of invincibility. She legally changed her name to Buenoano, a decision that carried more weight than just a simple change in identity. The new name was a distorted version of her first husband's surname, Goodyear. To Judy, this wasn't just a new beginning, it was a way to honor her first victim. By adopting the name Buenoano, Judy was, in her mind, paying tribute to the man she had killed. The twisted symbolism behind her decision was clear. She was embracing her past crimes, possibly even mocking the idea that anyone would ever catch on. It was a move that showed her growing arrogance, as she believed her past could never come back to haunt her.
But Judy's name change wasn't just personal. It would later become an important piece of the puzzle for investigators. As the authorities began to dig into her past, the connection between her new identity and her previous victims couldn't be ignored. The name Buenoano was a deliberate link to her history, a name that investigators would eventually connect to the murders she had committed. What Judy failed to realize was how this change would make it easier for the truth to come out. While she may have thought it would erase her past, it actually cemented it in a way that would later lead to her undoing. Her attempt to sever ties with her earlier crimes ended up doing the opposite, providing investigators with a critical lead that would bring her to justice. By the early 1980s, Judy had already proven that she could manipulate those around her and use their trust to her advantage. But her next victim was someone who should have been beyond reproach, her own son, Michael. Born in 1961, Michael was a reminder of Judy's troubled past, a past she seemed desperate to leave behind. His health had been fragile from an early age, and by the time he was an adult, he was suffering from severe physical ailments. His body weakened, and he struggled with everyday tasks, needing assistance just to walk. For Judy, Michael's condition became a burden. She saw him as another obstacle in her life, another reminder of the life she had tried to escape. So, she began to make plans. Judy knew that with Michael's deteriorating health, no one would question his decline. She started poisoning him, administering small doses of arsenic over the course of months, ensuring that the effects would be gradual and difficult to detect. As Michael grew weaker, his mobility became more restricted. He needed braces to walk, his body becoming increasingly frail. Judy played the role of the caring mother, always there to comfort him as he struggled. But behind her loving facade, she was pushing him further toward death. She knew that with his life insurance policy in place, his death would be just another opportunity for her to collect.
By May 1980, Michael was unable to function on his own. Judy arranged a canoe trip, presenting it as an opportunity for them to spend some time together. She convinced him not to wear a life jacket, claiming it wasn't necessary for such a short trip. They went out onto the water, and the canoe soon capsized. Judy quickly made it to safety, leaving Michael, unable to swim due to his frailty, to struggle. Despite his efforts, he couldn't keep himself afloat. He drowned in the water, unable to fight against his weakened body. Judy reported the incident as a tragic accident. She appeared devastated, just another grieving mother mourning the loss of her son. The authorities ruled it an accidental drowning, and no one suspected foul play. Judy collected the life insurance money, once again walking away with a substantial payout. Michael's death was the most chilling of Judy's crimes. Unlike her previous victims, he was her own flesh and blood. She manipulated him emotionally, played the loving mother, and ultimately took his life without hesitation. It was a crime that revealed the depths of her coldness and her willingness to sacrifice even those closest to her for personal gain. In 1982, Judy entered into a relationship with John Gentry, a businessman who appeared to be the ideal partner. He was kind, trustworthy, and completely unaware of Judy's dark past. They quickly grew close, and Judy once again played the role of the caring girlfriend. But behind the scenes, Judy had already set her sights on another victim. John seemed like an easy target. Judy took out a life insurance policy on him, seeing it as another opportunity to secure financial gain. She started poisoning him slowly, just as she had done before, adding small, undetectable doses of arsenic to his food and drink. Over time, John began to feel increasingly unwell, but he had no reason to suspect the woman who had been so attentive to him. Judy was, after all, the picture of concern. As his health worsened, John grew uneasy, but Judy reassured him, convincing him it was nothing serious. She told him he needed rest, constantly downplaying his symptoms. But as the poisoning seemed to drag on without the desired outcome, Judy grew impatient. She decided to escalate her plan. This time, she planted a bomb in John's car, hoping to finish what she had started.
The morning of the explosion, John was preparing for another ordinary day when disaster struck. The bomb went off, but incredibly, John survived. Badly injured but determined to live, he crawled from the wreckage. His survival against the odds marked a turning point in Judy's plan, one that she hadn't anticipated. John's recovery and his refusal to let the attack go unanswered sparked an investigation. As the authorities began to dig deeper into his case, they uncovered a string of suspicious deaths tied to Judy. The pieces of the puzzle slowly began to fall into place, and it became clear that Judy had been orchestrating murders for years. John's resilience in the face of the attack played a critical role in connecting the dots between her past victims and her present attempt on his life. John's ability to survive the bombing and his refusal to remain silent became crucial in bringing Judy's pattern of violence to light. His determination to seek justice was key in uncovering the full extent of her crimes, ultimately leading to the investigation that would expose her for the manipulator and killer she truly was. In 1983, the investigation into John Gentry's car bombing set off a chain of events that would expose Judy Buenoano's dark secrets. John had survived the attack, and his refusal to let the incident go unanswered sparked an investigation into the strange circumstances surrounding his near death. He believed someone close to him was responsible, and he was determined to find out who. What started as a suspicion soon turned into a web of connections that linked Judy to several mysterious deaths. As the investigation deepened, the authorities uncovered more unsettling patterns. Investigators learned of other sudden deaths tied to Judy, including her first husband, James Goodyear, and her second boyfriend, Bobby Joe Morris. All of these men had died under odd, unexplained circumstances. But the breakthrough came when investigators began to look at the possibility of poisoning. Arsenic was suspected, and that suspicion soon became a reality. The bodies of both James and Bobby Joe were exhumed, and forensic tests revealed arsenic in their remains. The slow-acting poison had gone undetected for years, leaving authorities stunned. What appeared to be natural deaths or accidents were in fact part of a chilling pattern of calculated murders. The discovery was a turning point in the investigation.
With this newfound evidence, the police had the crucial piece of the puzzle. Judy was arrested and charged with multiple murders, including the death of her son, Michael. The exhumation of his body provided further confirmation of the arsenic poisoning. Judy's ability to manipulate and evade suspicion for so long was coming to an end. The investigation into Judy Buenoano revealed the extent of her cold, methodical actions. Her calculated murders, which had been disguised as natural deaths, were now exposed for what they truly were: acts of manipulation and greed. Judy's arrest brought justice for the victims who had been silenced for so long. Her story is a reminder of how deception can hide the darkest of truths. The trial of Judy Buenoano in 1984 was a moment of intense drama and suspense. It was the culmination of years of investigation, during which authorities had pieced together a chilling series of murders that spanned over a decade. But this was not just any trial. It was the trial of a woman who had killed her own son and attempted to take the life of her boyfriend, John Gentry, all for financial gain. Judy's actions had shocked the public, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. As the trial began, the courtroom was filled with a mix of emotions. Family members of the victims, reporters, and spectators all watched closely as Judy, once again, presented herself as the picture of composure. She was calm, almost detached, as the evidence against her was laid out in front of the court. But the true weight of the case began to sink in as the details emerged. Prosecutors painted a horrifying picture of Judy's crimes. The evidence stacked against her was overwhelming. Testimonies from experts revealed the presence of arsenic in the remains of her first husband, James Goodyear, and her second boyfriend, Bobby Joe Morris. The exhumation of his son, Michael, only added to the damning evidence. Arsenic had been found in his system as well, proving that Judy had poisoned him over a long period of time before ultimately drowning him in a canoe. The same poison had been found in the remains of John Gentry's attempted murder, and it became clear that Judy had been systematically eliminating those closest to her to collect life insurance payouts. The emotional impact of the trial was hard to ignore. Judy's cold demeanor throughout the proceedings stood in contrast to the grief of the victims' families. The prosecution presented a compelling case, showing how Judy had used manipulation and deceit to cover up her crimes. But it was the testimony from John Gentry, the man who survived her attempt to kill him, that struck the hardest blow. He recounted his experience with chilling detail, painting a picture of the woman who had tried to kill him while playing the role of a caring partner. As the trial progressed, Judy's defense team attempted to downplay the evidence, arguing that there wasn't enough direct proof to convict her. They suggested that the deaths could have been natural or accidental, but the evidence told a different story. The jury deliberated, and it took only a few hours for them to return with a verdict. Judy Buenoano was found guilty of the murder of her son, Michael, and the attempted murder of John Gentry. The sentencing phase was just as dramatic. Judy was faced with the possibility of the death penalty, and the court didn't hold back. The judge, recognizing the gravity of her crimes, sentenced Judy to death by lethal injection. It was a historic moment. Judy became the first woman in Florida to be sentenced to death in over a century. The verdict was met with a mixture of relief and anger from the families of her victims, who had waited so long for justice. Judy's cold and calculated actions had finally caught up with her. The trial exposed the true extent of her manipulation, and in the end, the justice system ensured that she would not be able to harm anyone else. It was a moment that marked the end of a long and tragic chapter, and a reminder of the danger that can lie hidden behind a mask of normalcy. March 30th, 1998, marked the final day of Judy Buenoano's life. After years on death row, she faced the end with the same chilling calm that had characterized much of her life. It was a day like any other in prison, though for Judy, it held the finality of her long journey through the criminal justice system. She spent the morning quietly, preparing for what was to come, seemingly at peace with the reality that, after so many years, the end had arrived. As part of her final hours, Judy was offered a last meal. In a final act of irony, she requested a meal of steamed broccoli, asparagus, strawberries, and hot tea with lemon, foods considered light and healthy, far removed from the toxic substances she had used to kill so many in her life. It was a strange choice, one that almost seemed to mock the very nature of the poison she had once used to destroy the lives of those closest to her. Was it an attempt to show control over her fate, or simply a sign of how far removed she had become from the reality of her crimes?
Judy ate the meal calmly, without fanfare or any visible sign of remorse. There was no dramatic last-minute confession, no emotional outburst. Just a quiet acceptance of the inevitable. She didn't seem fazed by the enormity of the moment, as if the finality of her actions had already been settled in her mind, long before. When the time came, Judy was escorted to the death chamber. The witnesses waited in silence, and Judy was given the chance for a final statement. Her words were brief, almost indifferent. "No, sir." It was a stark, unemotional response to the moment that had finally come. There were no pleas for mercy, no reflections on her life or actions, just a brief acknowledgement of the inevitable. With that, Judy Buenoano's life came to an end, the execution marking the close of a long and dark chapter. Her calmness in the face of death mirrored the cold, calculated nature of her crimes, leaving a haunting reminder of the depths of manipulation and greed that had defined her life. On March 30th, 1998, Judy Buenoano's final moments came with an eerie calmness. As she was escorted to the death chamber at Florida State Prison, the air in the room grew tense. The witnesses, including family members of her victims, knew this was the conclusion of a long and painful process. For Judy, it seemed to be just another day, a woman who had lived for years without remorse. When asked if she had any last words, Judy's response was brief and chilling. "No, sir." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of her crimes. Her defiance, the same defiance that had marked her throughout the trial and her time on death row, was on full display. She stood there, seemingly unaffected, as if the years of murder and deception had never truly been a part of her. The procedure began. Judy was strapped into the electric chair, her head covered with a black hood. The room was filled with the quiet rustle of movements as corrections officers ensured everything was in place. Witnesses sat in silence, some unable to bear the weight of the moment, others stoic, waiting for the finality to settle in. Judy's calm, unflinching demeanor contrasted sharply with the emotions of those around her.
At precisely 7:13 p.m., the switch was pulled. The tension in the room was almost unbearable as the electric current surged through the chair. Judy's body stiffened, jolted by the force of the execution. The silence in the room was overwhelming, with only the faint hum of the machinery to break it. For those who had suffered because of her actions, this was the long-awaited closure. But it came without the satisfaction of a final confrontation. Judy's final words, or rather the lack of them, left her defiance unbroken until the very end. There was no catharsis for the families who had lost so much, no final reckoning for a woman who had manipulated and killed for years. As her life came to an end, it was clear that Judy Buenoano's last moments were marked by the same chilling indifference that had defined her life, a cold, unwavering refusal to confront the consequences of her actions. The execution was the final chapter of a long story of manipulation and deceit, But for many, it was not the resolution they had hoped for. After Judy Buenoano's execution, the shockwaves of her crimes continued to ripple through the lives of those she had affected. As the first woman in over a century to be executed in Florida, her case became infamous, capturing the attention of the public and law enforcement alike. Judy's calculated actions, spanning over a decade, painted a chilling portrait of a woman who used love and trust as tools to manipulate and kill. Yet her execution did not bring the resolution that the victims' families had hoped for. For the families of those she killed, the pain of their loss remained long after the trial ended. The people she had claimed to love, James Goodyear, Bobby Joe Morris, Michael Buenoano, had been taken from them for nothing more than greed. Despite the finality of Judy's execution, the trauma and heartache she left behind couldn't be undone. It was an unsettling truth that Judy's calm demeanor in her last moments provided no solace for the grief-stricken families who had been forced to live with her betrayal.
But even with Judy's conviction and execution, questions remained. Was she responsible for more deaths? Could there have been other victims, unknown and unlinked, whose deaths were also the result of Judy's manipulations? Law enforcement had long suspected that she may have had a wider reach than anyone realized. Yet, despite years of investigation, no other concrete evidence surfaced to confirm suspicions. This lingering uncertainty about possible additional victims added another layer to Judy's dark legacy. Known as the Black Widow, Judy's name became synonymous with manipulation and betrayal. She was a woman who killed not out of necessity, but for the sake of wealth, using those closest to her as mere stepping stones to her financial gain. Her legacy became a haunting reminder of how carefully concealed deception can shape a life of tragedy for others. And while her execution marked an end to one chapter, the unanswered questions about her past continued to cast a shadow over her story, leaving a legacy that, even in death, would never be fully understood. Judy Buenoano's case disgusts me, not just because of the lives she destroyed, but because someone could kill their own flesh and blood for money and get away with it for so long. How many more people like her are out there hiding in plain sight? And here's the real question. Why are we more fascinated with the victims than the cold, calculated criminals like Judy? Are we enabling these monsters by glamorizing them in true crime stories without questioning how they got away with murder? Let's talk about it. Do you think there's another Judy living among us right now? Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.